So, man, you know, coming from Oklahoma City, young man, graduated high school, had zero ambition to go to college, zero. And at the time I graduated, man, I had 2 kids, right? So I had my daughter right before I was graduating, and then right after I graduated, I had my son. So wanted to work in the civilian sector, you know, just traditional family, man. My grandfather was in the Army. That's who raised me. He grew up working various jobs, and he always taught me work ethic. So he said, when you get on a job, first thing you need to do is you need to work. So didn't really know what I wanted to do once I graduated. So I started out working various jobs, from Hearst Reservations, 7-Eleven, Fred Jones Transmission Plant, Hobby Lobby Warehouse, Cox Communications, cable technician, Direct TV, Sprint, you name it, man. If it paid 20 cents more an hour, man, I was with it. And that was only because, man, I had the kids, right? I did not want to be a statistic. So I knew I wanted a large family. I came up from a small family, you know, 2 sisters, never had a brother. So I knew I was going to have a large family. So therefore, I just wanted to try to provide the best way I could. Now, I had a turning point, you know, after working various jobs and stuff like that, and start realizing that, you know, man, I need medical and all that kind of stuff there. And some of the jobs I had, they just wasn't paying it, right? So I had a tough time riding around, you know, as a young man, no insurance on my car, man. Got pulled over for my signal light not working, didn't have insurance. That led to my driver's license being suspended. So I was working at Williams-Sonoma and Pottery Barn call center. Now, being a knucklehead, I'm on the clock, I'm leaving work, you know, daily. You know, I'm thinking I'm one of the best, you know, telephone consultants they have, so I'm taking advantage of the company essentially. And man, I got my driver's license suspended probably a year and a half prior. And now I'm working at Williams-Sonoma. So I had an 85 Cutlass, got it painted. So I said, man, you know what? I found a blemish on it. I'm finna leave work today, man, and go, you know, take it to the shop and go get them to look at it on the clock. I get to the dealership where I had the car painted. This dude rings me. Police show up. And once I went to go get the car checked out, man, like I said, the police pulled up, and I knew once this police officer was taking just a little bit longer than normal to come back to the vehicle, man, he came back, he said, Mr. Hall, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And, you know, growing up from a split up household, man, you know, didn't really stay with my mom and pops too long, stayed with my grandparents, right? I was always braced for bad news, so I told him to give me the bad news. So bad news is you got a warrant, you know, and I got to take you in. But the good news is I got this individual's insurance and stuff, so you better take care of it. So, man, I had my hair growed out and all that stuff there, you know, beard and everything. I was about to braid my hair up. And I went in Oklahoma City County Jail at like 9 o'clock in the morning, man. I didn't get out till the next day at like 6 p.m. So you talk about I had a whole lot of time to do some reflecting and thinking. And immediately when I got out, man, I cut my hair off, because I used to be a barber. I cut my hair off, went to the recruiter's office Monday morning, right? So I'm sitting down with the recruiter. He starts talking to me about, you know, the Air Force offers BAH, you know, if you need somewhere to stay, move off base. You know, they do have free base housing. You got BAS for help you offset food costs and all that stuff there. So I said, man, where do I sign up at? He said, I hadn't talked to you about the jobs. And I was like, man, I don't really care what the job is, man. I done worked 10 or 15 different jobs prior to that. So work was irrelevant to me, man. What I care about is these benefits that you finna provide for me to be able to take care of my family, right? So needless to say, man, we get through that piece there. Now I'm signed up. You know, I'm in the delayed entry program, right? I get to basic training. You know, basic training was a little snack. Get to test school, another little easy work, right? But I get to Yokota Air Force Base. That's my first duty location. And when I tell you, meeting people from different walks of life and all that stuff there, and realizing that not everybody comes from where I come from, and people talking sideways and slick and all that. And for the life of me, I think the turning point was we were sitting there one day, we was having a little dispute. And I remember one of my NCOs told me, he said, man, how y'all might have to take that outside the back of the hangar. So immediately it was like a switch with me. Also, we allowed to fight. Game on. And I could not get that mentality out of my head for years, right? Just thinking we was able to fight. Didn't realize how far that would set me back. So for 12 years in the Air Force, man, I was in my own way. For 12 years.
What words would you describe young Airman Hall?
Boy. Man, closed off, you know, angry, but determined as well.
What advice would you give to young airmen that feel the same way?
I would say, man, whether you wear this uniform or not, when you're young in life, man, sometimes you got to give things a chance. And it's okay to mentor up, right? Sometimes we think that somebody older than us has to be the voice of reason to us, right? Sometimes, man, you can be younger. It could be somebody younger around you that could provide you some perspective. And you approach a lot of things through fear, right? Because you just don't know. So therefore you stay guarded. So you never let a resource or somebody that's really trying to help you, you never let them in, because essentially you can't tell that they're trying to help you. Why? Because you're so guarded, because you don't trust them, because you don't know them. So you got to take the time to get to know and study and ask the questions and help somebody understand you. Sometimes we put expectations on other people to think that they should understand us. That was my struggle. I'm thinking everybody should just be able to understand me, where I come from. So I was lashing out, physically lashing out, and it caught up with me. So it was a turning piece. But man, I just tell you, take your time, man. Not everybody's against you.
When you first put on the uniform, did you ever imagine that you'd end up to where you are now?
No, definitely not. Definitely not, because I knew how my attitude was. I never thought that I would make it anything past a staff sergeant, because of the amount of trouble and struggles I went through, just not feeling like I had a support system, right? Because I told you guys, man, early on, I come from a split up household. So nothing was ever constant in my life. And what was the closest to constant was my grandparents, right? So from my time at Yokota, I joined the Air Force in October 2000, and I PCS'd out of there March 2004. My grandmother, the only reason I came home on leave was because my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, and that's who raised me. So from that time right there, it was a slight struggle. But moving forward, once she passed away in 2005, man, that struggle got worse, because I was the one person that could calm me down immediately. So when I felt like my support system, all I had, which is my grandparents, was no longer available, I didn't feel like I had anything to turn to. Now, me and my wife have been together since 1995, but I stayed so guarded. As I told you guys, man, I'm just a guarded. I struggle with trust. I would never even really let her in. But thankfully, she's been in my corner since then. So we coming up on 30 years together. So she's my voice of reason now. She's what helped mold me and change me into the perspective that I have now. She kept pushing me. So I never thought I would make it this far. So, once I made it past staff sergeant, man, everything else was a blessing. So in return, I want to pour it back and give it back to folks.
What do you have to say to people that feel the same way, kind of like in that previous position, where they might feel like, they don't have the support, or they're in the middle grounds of their enlistment, and they feel frustrated with either the system, the culture, or just in the military itself? What are how did you get past that? What do you have to pass down to the rest?
Man, you have to start networking, right? Some of these orgs at all various different ranks and stuff like that, you have to get out here and you have to know people, because once you start talking to other people, you'll find out that somebody went through a similar walk of life that you went through. So once you see somebody that went through that and they came through it, then that gives you hope that you can overcome it. So you have to change your mindset.
Have you always been involved in organizations when you first started?
Because I initially thought the military was a brotherhood. So I was always, like I said, when I grew up, I didn't have a brother. So I was always looking for, something to cling to, right? A lot of it when I first joined was playing basketball. I used to play basketball for a lot of years. And when you a hooper, you start to meet a lot of folks, and that becomes like your brotherhood. So, I pushed through that for a lot of years, but then a lot of my boys that I used to play ball with, man, they started getting kicked out for just doing some various things and stuff like that. So I had to start finding other outlets. I got into weightlifting, and that was a stress reliever, but a lot of those things, man, that you find are only temporary, right? But once I really started networking and getting heavily ingrained in the professional orgs and stuff, I started enjoying it, right? Because it gets to a point where when you wear this uniform, you may hate it, you may not really like it, you may contemplate whether you're gonna re-enlist or extend. But once you find something that grabs your attention, that you start enjoying it, when it starts to feel like it's not a job anymore, so you look forward to coming to work, that's when you start enjoying the Air Force. Whether that be a PCS assignment, whether that be a professional org that you found to go hang out with, whether that be somebody that you found is from your hometown, y'all share the same birthday, share the same thought process, and you met them all it could be from sitting in the food court one day just grabbing lunch. Once you get that satisfaction right there, man, this Air Force is a blessing, true blessing.
Every leader has a defining low point. For you, what was the moment that tested your identity as Airman Hall?
Man, I probably got a couple of those. Probably the one that's most prevalent, 2012, Lake and Eve, Staff Sergeant Hall, discussing with a senior NCO about a fitness test and a no-show, right? Something that I had worked while he was on leave, had worked it all the way out from, so I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. So, I was diagnosed with arthritis in both my knees. So therefore I was on a profile. So when you would have to show up to the fact, if you didn't have that profile with you, they was gonna turn you away. So I already knew that. So I worked with the PCM, inquired through MDG several times, right? Okay, well, you know what? It's getting a runaround. So I decided, let me go to the program manager, UFPM. Let me talk to them, right? Asked several times, it was working it. Now, mind you, as we're working this, the fitness test date is steady coming closer. So once the UFPM couldn't assist me, I reached out to my flight chief because my section chief was on leave. So I reached out to my flight chief, gave him the backstory on everything I was working, told him when my test day was due, and he told me I'll work it. He said, don't worry about it, Hall, I got it. Okay, so my section chief comes back off leave, and here's the day that the test is due. And I didn't have that 469. And of course, I got a no-show popped up in email, right? Section chief calls me and I was want to talk about it. So initially he starts talking to me, and the tone I'm talking to you guys in, man, this is the tone that I always use. I'm always calm, cool, and collected, right? So I go in there to talk to him about it, and immediately he asked me, hey, what's going on with your fitness test? And I said, well, sir, senior, he cut me off. You think just because you a staff sergeant and you've been the president of the booster club and you do all this fundraising and blah, 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 this and that and the other, and he's using profanity. So I get up and I said, man, I'm not gonna stand here and let you talk to me like this. And I take 2 steps. The dude grabs my arm and turns me around and tells me to stand in a position of attention. And when I tell you I locked and loaded my fist and I was staring at the ceiling, because it was a lot of stuff contemplating. My whole career was like flashing in my eyes. That probably was the biggest turning point right there. But mind you, I told you guys, man, when I was younger, that I struggled, right? In my career, I struggled with trust. So I stayed guarded. So I had to tell myself that if I don't make a transition right here, I won't be able to make it to retirement. I won't be able to take care of these kids that drove me to want to join, right? Now, if we rewind it back a little bit, probably 5 years prior, 2007-ish, somewhere around off in there, my security clearance was in jeopardy. Once again, not understanding how this Air Force works, man. I came in with some bills on my credit, not understanding credit because I didn't have anybody explain to me. Well, I didn't realize that my civilian credit was going to affect my military security clearance. So that was another triggering point in my career. Now, the icing to that triggering point right there was in 04, I told you guys I came home on leave because my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. My wife was pregnant at the time, and my second youngest son was born 3 months early. So he was 2 pounds. So we almost lost him, right? So I'm leaving work. I used to get off work at 10th Air Force Base, 2:45. My supervisor told him to tell me that he didn't mind if I left 15 minutes early to go visit my son in ICU. So I'm leaving work 15 minutes early. And I'm like, you know what, I appreciate that, man. You guys taking care of me, at least trying to help. I get a feedback later on that year at the end of 04 that says, hey man, I got to mark you down because you don't put in a 40-hour work week. I'm a fair person. I said, that's fine, man. Everybody else working 40 hours, Now, you fast forward 2 years, there's a guy that works with me. His baby has complications. He's allowed to leave work at 08 every morning, and he's rubbing it in my face. When I tell you that started a downward spiral, old Hall, I started trying to lash out on everything around me. So all his friends, I put these paws on them. I put the paws on him. They didn't want the smoke. They didn't want it. And whole while, I didn't realize, man, how I'm only hurting me, right? Because I just felt like, man, it's nothing but favoritism around her. And I wasn't buying into it. I could not stand favoritism, right? I know I'm rough around the edges. I'm from the streets. I get it, right? But if this is the Air Force, I would assume that leadership and those around me would help mold me and guide me. So I felt like, in a sense, they failed me. But in reality, I failed myself because I should have found another way to deal with it. And who knows where my career would be. So it's a 2-part. I think that my career taking those left turns taught me a lot. It's a lot of growing pains, but it allows me to get perspective now. But other than that, if I didn't go through those tough lessons, would I be able to provide the perspective that I'm providing now?
What are some things that you learned from that experience that you do now? Let's say you have an airman that are undergoing the same thing that you went through. How would you deal with it now?
So essentially, man, what I do is when I see younger versions of myself, I pull them in and talk to them. And then I help them understand what role can they play in it, right? Prime example would be, let's say you have a disconnect with your supervisor. For whatever reason, you just feel like this supervisor ain't supportive, right? Maybe you start asking the questions of, let me take this ACA form and try to seek feedback, and then let me try to understand what's expected and what's needed from me. Because the better I understand whoever it is that is the opposition or opponent, then the better I can figure out how to adjust accordingly, right? It's when we don't try to understand them, we only create more ripples. And the way this Earth was designed, man, those with the stripes and the rank, they had the ultimate say so. So you got to be in compliance, because being non-compliant can lead to insubordination, man, can lead to paperwork, and it just further iterates this downward spiral.
So growing up, what role did mentorship, or I would say lack of mentorship, play in those years? And more importantly, what advice would you give to airmen who don't have that type of mentorship similar to when you were growing up?
You got to seek it. You got to seek. When you don't have that, like, you get to a point, man, if you, I would assume everybody, out here has purchased, some type of bottled beverage, carbonated bottled beverage, right? Have you ever bought a carbonated bottled beverage out of a vending machine, and then immediately when you get ready to crack that seal, it starts fizzing out, right? All that pressure built up in that bottle. So until you relieve some of that pressure's always gonna stay there. So you gotta find some kind of way to relieve it. Now there's various means to do that, right? Some people go for a run, some people go for a walk, some people are animal lovers, some people watch movies, some people go to the library, some people like that personal interaction, from a mentor, but you gotta find out what is your safe haven, because only you know you better than anybody else. You gotta figure out what's your safe haven, what keeps you grounded. When you're in your happiest space, what is that?
Was there a specific moment that you realized, like a click, you're like, all right, I got it. Like, I know how to lead from here on out.
That probably came when I became the president of AFSA, Chapter 1056 at Dallas Air Force Base. Now mind you, I had been Booster Club presidents and heavily involved in 5-6 and all that stuff before then, right? But over the years, man, the one thing I've always done was I tried to take an outside inward approach, right? Sometimes when we sitting inside of a box and we on the inside looking out, we can only see so much. But boy, when you step outside that box and you look from the top down, you're surprised how much more you can see. So I sit back and I observe, right? When I was part of all those orgs, I was just observing, how could we make things better? If I was in the role where I was leading this org, how could I make it better? Well, I got voted in as a president of 1056. And man, I just immediately got my gears to turning. So for the first 90 days, after building a team, the first 90 days, all we did was sit down with one another and learn one another. To just, in my eyes, I wanted to know, all these guys' strengths and weaknesses so I could figure out how to best utilize them on a team. Because I don't think it's fair in any leadership role to put expectations on somebody, not knowing if they're capable of achieving them. Because you could set yourself up for failure and set them up for failure as well. Once you understand your team, and then understanding that team I had and asking them what they would like to do, and then putting it all together, our ultimate goal, my personal goal, was to win the chapter of the year. Now for them, some of their goals was, winning, other awards and things like that, which when I tell you, we achieved it all. It was numerous promotions came out of that, numerous BTZ packages, numerous OTS packages, numerous thank yous, numerous senior NCOs, produced out of that forum right there. Nothing but respect from two command chiefs, Chief Eric Duggar and Chief Palmer. So from taking that role and seeing it flourish, and then listening to feedback, because to me, the only way we knew we were successful was based on the feedback of everybody that was part of the culture, right? If we put together an event without that feedback, we as a team can't determine that this event was successful. No, we need that feedback. So And each event we did after that, man, we wanted to make it better and better and better. So I think that was when I just really honed in as a tech sergeant. I honed in on my leadership skills then.
What words of encouragement or advice would you give someone who's new into a leadership role? Let's say right after ALS, when they become an NCO, right, or having their first team. What are some 2 or 3 advice that you would give them?
Well, you got to study the team. The better you understand that team, the easier it is to lead them. Once you find out what makes somebody tick, right, you use that to get 150% effort out of them. So you have to study them. You got to try to understand them. Sometimes people in leadership positions, you want to force people to meet you at your level. And sometimes, man, you need to go in reverse. You need to meet them where they at. Because once you understand where they at, then you can understand how to build upon that. But a lot of times, man, there's so many people out here that feel like nobody is trying to understand them. And then they get all these expectations put on them. So it creates pressure. So I would say, man, study the team. That's the best advice you can use right there. Study the team. The better you understand them, the easier it'll become to lead them.
How did you learn to lead people who didn't think, act, or speak like you? And what advice would you give leaders who are in those same positions?
I think it goes back to, like I said, studying folks, man. You have to, and when I say study, man, you may have to ask in various lanes, right? Some people fear public speaking. Some people fear, socialization and stuff like that, right? So you have to really understand them and then figure out how do you turn what essentially is the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You got to figure out how to turn those weaknesses into strengths. And sometimes you have to get in the trenches with them. Like if I got somebody that struggles with public speaking, instead of them going up there by themselves, if the situation allows, man, I go up there with them. And then we can turn it into a 2-way conversation with an audience to take that pressure off, right? And then that builds confidence, right? So once you start understanding that and then you get in the trenches with them, it makes it so much easier to want to assist and help out. And then they start believing in themselves. You just can't throw somebody out there in the water that never swim and tell them, hey, man, you'll figure it out. They may drown. So you may have to get out there with them. You may have to get a little bit shallower water, right? So don't give them such a big piece of the pie first. Help them get over whatever that stage fright is and build upon that.
How do you build trust with troops who come from backgrounds very different from your own?
It may be part of a 2-part, right? You got to create an environment where everybody feels included, right? And then I think you have to, you got to figure out, from those that like you said, that come from a city life and a country life or whatever the case, if you notice that they don't naturally gravitate toward each other and talk, could the underlying root be that, man, I don't understand, I'm from the country, so I don't understand city, and I'm from the city, so I don't understand country, right? So what you may be able to do as a leader in that position, you reach out to them and, you create scenarios and stuff like that with team building exercises, because team building will help develop trust. So sometimes you may be subliminally building trust versus directly trying to enforce that trust, right? And when I say team building exercise, it could be something that, hey, I need somebody that, if let's say we got 6 people, and we gonna use 2 colors. How many of you guys prefer red and how many of you guys prefer blue? Because I got to build 2 teams, right? And then we run through an exercise. And then after that, those of you that chose red, now I want you to choose blue. And those of you that chose blue, I want you to choose red, right? And then you cross-talk that information. Why did you initially choose red, right? That can start to build the trust right there, just through that conversation. Just by helping them understand why they make certain decisions, right? Because that's what you're extracting as a leader. You're trying to understand, here's my team. I need to know that they competent once I give them a task on how they're going to achieve it. Well, you got to battle test them.
Team conflicts. Mm-hmm. How do you break that out?
How do you break down a team conflict?
Yep. So don't like working with the other for whatever, maybe whether it's like religious, social conflict, right? They disagree, something they see on the news. Mm-hmm. How do you address a team without fracturing that relationship too much?
So I would get the team to understand it, man. At a minimum, we all have a professional hat that we need to wear. Now, personally, we don't always have to like everybody. I don't have to like where you go eat lunch. I don't have to like where you go hang out off work, right? But professionally, we got a job to do. So if that job requires us to communicate for the sake of the job, for the mission, then we have to do that because we charged and we bound by, especially wearing this uniform, right? So, go ahead.
What advice do you have for airmen who feel overlooked or labeled as lost cause?
Sometimes it depends on who's labeling you, right? Somebody could be labeling you as a lost cause, and do they consider you a lost cause because they just don't understand you, right? So if you get to try to figure out why is this airman or this individual a lost cause, that's what a leader would have to ask themselves, right? So sometimes to get some perspective to figure out that, hey man, it ain't necessarily a lost cause. You didn't necessarily give them the tools they needed to succeed. And then if you're on the receiving end, you know, if you feel like you a lost cause, well then you got to ask yourself that, why am I a lost cause? You know, am I trying to force myself to be somebody I'm not, right? The best version of you can be is truly being you. Don't lose sight of you, the core of you. All of us have core pieces inside of us that make up who we are. So you got to build upon that, right? Everybody's got some type of strength or weakness. So maybe your strength is, you know, that I'm not the most outspoken person, right? But behind the scenes, man, I will get off into a AFI or a regulation or something. And I'll read that and I can extract the data. Well, as the leader, you got to figure that piece out about that individual. So necessarily they ain't just a lost cause. You put a heavy expectation on them that they wasn't necessarily right now capable of achieving. I'm mad because you don't speak up all the time because you ain't the greatest public speaker. But little did I know that, man, that's one of your weaknesses. So did I try to give you the tools to succeed to build upon that? If I didn't, then man, I failed you. And you got to own that as a leader. You got to own that.
What do you say to senior NCOs who's burned out and no longer believes that they make a difference?
What's driving the burnout? You know, that would be the question. What's driving the burnout? And if it's to the point where it's no turning back, it's probably time for you to retire. Or remove yourself from a position to where you're directly impacting folks, right? You could be in a 1D position where you solely have to worry about you. But if not, man, you that's a huge failure to be in a leadership position and not taking care of those beneath you. Because, man, they need it. You got to think all these young folks at some point in time. Hell, I was a young airman at one point in time. And shit, boy, I didn't know left from right and right from left, especially regarding that UCMJ. I had to figure it out. But when you got somebody there that's helping nurture that and guide that, man, it makes it so much easier. And that's what we should be doing as leaders and senior NCOs. We should be trying to figure out how to make these paths easier for these airmen and then get these airmen to understand that, hey, you know what, you got a job to do, right? My job is to make sure you have the tools. I need you to do the job. If we can coexist, it's going to work out for the both of us. And you got to go out your way to take care of them. Sometimes the smallest things, a letter of appreciation, a coin, something like that, quarterly award, that stuff will wake up somebody and they'll be forever grateful because whole while they thought somebody wasn't paying attention or didn't believe in them. Those are the most satisfying days when you taking care of somebody behind the scenes and they don't know you're doing it. And then they go get some recognition and then they just forever grateful because you didn't lose sight of them.
Did you have leaders growing up in the military that took care of you, but you didn't even know?
Man, majority of my stuff was really self-earned. And it's probably because, you know, I created an environment for it to be that way, right? Because I wasn't an open book. You know, I believed that if I didn't like you, I didn't trust you. And if I didn't trust you, I didn't respect you. So therefore, if I'm in the work center and those three are on my radar, then man, you just getting that stonewall face. So while you could be wanting to help me or try, but I won't let you in because I don't believe you have my best interests at heart.
Do you think there's a difference between respecting the person as a person versus rank?
Yes.
How does that work?
1,000% agreed. And maybe that was probably my biggest struggle when I came in, because I would look at it as if you a man and I'm a man, then respect me as a man first. But it seemed like the obstacles I was running into is somebody wanted me to respect the rank. And if I can't respect you as a man, then I struggle with respecting your rank. And it was going left for me. That's why I was constantly in trouble. I had to overcome that, right? So when I got in leadership positions, man, I wanted people to respect me as a person because that's what I am. This uniform has an expiration date on it. You can't stay in it forever. But I care more about, do I have your respect as a man, you know, and as an individual, than I do worrying about my rank. I don't need you to respect me as in my rank. Just respect me as a person. Why? Because I'm going to give you that same respect. I'm going to treat you with respect.
This is a tough one to ask, but for people who hold dearly for their rank and want others to respect them based on their achievements.
I think at times if you have to use your rank, you could be teeter-tottering on on making a situation personal versus professional. The reason I say that is because you got to think if you a chief, if you a first sergeant, if you a senior, whatever the case, right? Our rank is worn on our chest. People can see that rank. So do I necessarily need to bring that rank up when I'm having a conversation with you? Do I need to bring the rank into the fold? And those that feel like they have to use that rank, maybe it's because, through their walk of life, at some point in time, people may have doubted them. And now that they've earned a position of power, that they feel like, essentially, I'm somebody. And I want everybody to know it, and I want you to respect it. Well, man, a lot of times, man, if you use your rank, things are going to go left. They're going to go left. Because people that's like positional power instead of personal power. So I think on both ends of the spectrum, you have to think about if you're the leader that's using your rank, why is it that you feel you have to use your rank? Because if it's a violation, right? If it's an AFI violation or a UCMJ violation, man, I don't have to use my rank. That violation, you violated that. Whoever this individual may be, it'll catch up with them. But I can still earn the respect as a person.
What would you say about helping agencies, and how much have they helped you and those that you've helped throughout the way?
Man, but now when I tell you as a first sergeant with helping agencies, support agencies and stuff like that, boy, you talk about a true blessing, especially once you develop relationships with them. So I'm not the type that I only want to talk to you when I need something. I don't mind swinging by a support agency, just hanging out and just, shooting the breeze with them and stuff like that to understand their programs. So as shirts, man, we have to understand these programs for these support agencies. Sometimes as shirts, we levy expectations on agencies, and you almost want to try to tell them how to do their job, right? But you got to realize that these agencies, man, they all got bosses and stuff like that, right? So who knows what's in their regs and all that stuff there. Now, sometimes is there some disconnects? Yes, right? But we can work together to find a resolution. So those support agencies helping me and helping me is helping our Airmen, right? Because the experience I go have that I gain knowledge from, I'm able to go share that with these Airmen to figure out how to help them through situations, right? So everybody's got to take a knee at some point in time in life.
Last note on leadership, what are words of wisdom?
Stay true to you. Stay true to you, and then always remember, approach everything, man, with respect, right? Don't try to demand respect, earn respect. If there's a disconnect with respect, have a one-on-one with whoever this individual is or these group of individuals to help them understand you, and then establish those boundaries and talk it out instead of letting emotions drive you. A lot of times, man, in situations as leaders, we get emotionally charged and then we just spit words out. Words are just like bullets. Once you spit them out, you can't take them back. That stuff can be ingrained in somebody's mind for years and whole while somebody's harboring some resentment towards you because of what you verbally assaulted them with. So just think about that before, if you find your heart rate picking up before you finna address them. It's probably time to take a pause, step away, collect your thoughts, and then reapproach it, right? Reapproach it, man, because you don't want to speak from an emotional state. You want to speak from a logical state, right? So just analyze it, man. So just stay cool, calm, and collected.
Appreciate it.
You got it, man.